So this project is called Narrow House. It involves the adaptation to a Victorian terrace house located within the municipality of the City of Melbourne and resides on a corner allotment adjacent laneway. Orientated north-south, the property is located on St Martin's Lane, a smallish plot of 5 metres width by 30 metres long. It sits within that medium density pocket of South Yarra, tucked just behind the restaurant strip of Domain Road. The City of Melbourne is due to reach 8 million people in just 30 years' time. It has taken us 200 years to get to 4 million, and yet we're going to increase that amount again in just 30 years' time. This is something we think about a lot, and we feel and we think about how we should be building around this. So this neighbourhood, just 3 k's from the city, we think is reminiscent of medium-rise London, with many 3 to 6 level residential buildings, and we see as a bit of a precursor and a snapshot of future densities in Melbourne's inner-ring suburbs. Before we commence any residential project, we like to do a walk around the neighbourhood, and so this is the St Martin's Art Precinct. And whilst containing many taller residential buildings, this area still retains a lovely sense of the fine-grained, quiet residential neighbourhood, with its many lovely cobbled laneway moments and containing a healthy combination of heritage and more contemporary architecture. Whilst being a heritage overlay, the City of Melbourne are slightly more flexible than the City of Stonington in supporting taller height additions. However, there was a stipulation that as the addition would be reasonably visible from St Martin's Lane, that if 3 stories was to be supported, a recessive and graded approach was encouraged, so either set in or moderated in some way. It's noteworthy that the recent application from the immediate neighbour had been approved but unbuilt for 3 stories and a basement, and as such our clients were keen to pursue a similar amount of amenity. So these are the existing floor plans portraying a small 2-bed terrace layout with a standard lack of light and little to no garden space, which was covered by a carport at the rear. These are the existing conditions photos when we came to the project. The couple now have 2 young children with talk of a third, and so our project needed to cater for a 5-person home. So our client's objectives were to demolish the rear wing and adaptively reuse the existing heritage structure, provide new architecture that builds vertically on the narrow site, enabling additional floor area, whilst simultaneously returning site area to outdoor living space and garden. And so our proposal looked to build a new building with beyond the front 2 rooms that was recessive and separate, clearly distinguishing old from new, and in this case, and from day one the client was adamant about using every square millimetre of land left, which we agreed meant putting space underground. So the site strategy involved removal of rear wing, provision of a new building that allowed for reinstating of outdoor living spaces, a central glass connection bringing light into the centre of the site, and integration with the laneway at ground level. And because we were situated adjacent the side laneway, a key move in combating the narrow nature of the site was to shift the entrance to the central side of the property, as shown. So in doing this, it gave back the front entry area to a usable private open space, ensuring the elimination of corridors. So old and new are now separated by this new entry and by an interstitial glazed circulation stair that mediates both architecture and levels. So at ground level in the old building is now given over to an open kitchen and dining space that spills out to a breakfast courtyard. To the north is the family room, connecting with external living area. Upstairs is a zoned parents and kids sleeping. In the basement is a storage / amenities area with a flexi space for a kids playroom and car storage facilities under the deck. At 3rd and 4th levels, a space for guest bed / home office, and there's the 4th level is a roof space for a garden up top. This diagram here with the green explains the return of external living space and garden in the new proposal, which now covers more than 50% of the site area at different levels, which we think is a pretty amazing result given the way it was. So the home has gone from a 120 square metre home or dwelling to a 260 square metre dwelling, which, and whilst 5 stories may sound extravagant for one dwelling, if you think about the 8 million people stat and that rule of thumb that Stuart Harrison used to talk about of an appropriate amount of dwelling space per person of 50 square metres, well, this configuration takes up minimal land coverage, yet provides 260 square metres for a 5-person family. So we would say in this case that 5 stories is actually highly appropriate. And this is facilitated by those 2 key moves of shifting the entry to the side and going underground. Whilst unconventional, the act of navigating the side entry involves a series of thresholds of public and private, and as one approaches the and actually enters the building. As shown in the plan, internally, this enables the use of the entire width without need for hallways. This is the view to the kitchen, and we like that you get these little oddities of, you know, the old front door, for example, reinterpreted. This is the front breakfast garden area that spills off the kitchen. Facing south, it gets used a lot in summer with the doors open and where it's cooler and in shade. As we already had a high wall here, and in fact the whole of the street has high walls. In this case, this worked incredibly well. Circulating through the entire building is now via the central stair, and this is the stair down to the lower basement in this shot. And so conceived as a semi-public space and almost an external space between the pavilions, if you like, the stair has full view of the laneway context, activating it, providing interest and providing community connection with locals, and a unique off-the-pavement entry sequence reminiscent of European or higher density neighbourhoods. The faceted form of the building is derived from planning negotiations and that discussion of providing a recessive building to both front and rear. And desire to avoid a wedding cake profile like our neighbour here, but rather a consistent tapered form led to the truncated profile that essentially houses 5 levels but reduced in scale to look like a 2 or 3 story building. At the rear, the perforated metal ends are folded up and in to cater for overlooking requirements. And clad in laser cut aluminium panels acting as a rain screen, no windows or doors are visible, enabling this abstracted sculptural object as a backdrop and in the shadow of the original structure. 1 minute remaining. Computer-generated motif is cut into the skin, is derived from the pattern of the brickwork, so 3 stretches to 1 head, of course, articulating the facade and interpreting the scale and the fine grain of the Victorian filigree. Variations and transitions in the pattern and graduation in frequency happen towards the centre of the building, allowing light and ventilation into the bedrooms and preserving privacy. At the rear, design is done in collaboration with Eckersley Garden Architecture, which will establish itself over time to merge with the tree-lined amenity beyond. And there's also car storage there, which gives back that whole area to private open space. I'll just flick through these. We're going up to the roof garden now. So the roof garden, again designed with Eckersley, provides adequate soil capacity for trees to grow to a reasonable level. And designed as a home for a family, the resulting conversion embraces density with elevated functionality, providing a new piece of contemporary architecture whilst integrating with the fine grain of the urban laneway, the neighbourhood, and the existing building's history.